When you lift a glass today, beer, mead, or wine, you're holding something far older than written language. Long before kings raised goblets, before cities carved themselves into stone, before gods were given names, people drank. But where did it begin? Was the first sip a happy accident, a pot of forgotten grain soured by time? Or was it something more intentional, more ritualistic, bound to ancient mysteries of life, death, and the earth itself? Residue clinging to clay pots tells us this story stretches back at least 12,000 years, to a time when mammoths still walked in fading numbers, and humans were only beginning to settle. A time when survival itself was fragile, yet curiosity was already stirring. And so the first toast was raised, not in a banquet hall, not in a palace, but in mud huts around firelight on the edge of survival. But what did that drink mean? Nourishment? Survival? Or a misguided attempt to reach the spirit world? Imagine it, a clay jar filled with grains or honey, left untouched after a storm. Days pass, the air shifts, wild yeast, unseen, unstoppable, drifts in. Inside, bubbles form, froth rises. A strange, sour smell fills the air. This was the alchemy of fermentation, discovered not through science, but through accident, desperation, and chance. For the hunter-gatherer, food was fleeting. Grains stored in jars could rot, honey could crystallize, fruit could spoil. But sometimes what rotted did not vanish, it transformed. And when those brave enough to taste it lifted that first sour liquid to their lips, something stirred inside them. Weakness, dizziness, a heavy fog in the mind, the first intoxication. Did they fear it, believing the jar had been touched by spirits? Or did they embrace it, mistaking harm for a gift? And so around a fire, one taste became two. Two became many. And a ritual was born. But was this ritual a path to unity, or the beginning of dependence? Historians often tell us that humans first farmed to eat. But what if they farmed to drink? In the Fertile Crescent, around 10,000 BCE, wild grains like barley and wheat were harvested. Yet curiously, evidence of beer residues in early clay pots predates large-scale farming. Could it be that brewing came before bread? Some scholars whisper this possibility, that our ancestors bent the land not merely for food, but for intoxication, ritual, and gathering. But alcohol is not just nutrition. It clouds judgment, weakens the body, and deceives the spirit. In a world already filled with dangers, perhaps the first farmers unknowingly invited another danger into their lives. If so, then every toast today carries a hidden truth. Civilization itself may have risen from the bottom of a jar, but so too did one of its earliest poisons. Across Eurasia and Africa, traces of prehistoric brewing emerge like whispers from broken shards. In China's Yellow River Valley, a 9,000-year-old pot holds residues of honey, rice, and fruit, the oldest known mead. In the Near East, barley beer stains the insides of clay jars buried deep beneath ancient houses. In Egypt, vast breweries churned frothing vats long before pyramids reached the sky. And in Africa, honey wines may have been shared beneath the shade of baobabs, the drink sticky with sweetness and danger. The drink was more than a thirst quencher. It became medicine, ritual, and offering. It was poured for the living and left for the dead. It loosened tongues, stirred emotions, and connected mortals to their imagined gods. But if alcohol truly shaped humanity, why does its story feel so hidden? To taste ancient beer was to taste something unpredictable. One jar might soothe, another might sicken. Yeast, uncontrolled, was both gift and threat. The line between nourishment and poison was thin, yet humans returned to it again and again. Why? Because in a world where life was brief, where disease stalked every corner, fermented drinks lasted longer than water. They were sometimes safer, sometimes nourishing, a liquid bread packed with calories and strength. But survival alone cannot explain the gatherings around it, the voices that rose in song, or the feasts that turned to quarrels. In the froth of those clay jars, humanity thought they found joy. Yet often, that joy turned to chaos. Picture this. A small tribe gathers in a cave, torches casting shadows on stone walls, painted with hunts and beasts. At the center, a pot is lifted. Froth spills over its rim. Hands reach out, dipping, pouring, sharing. Voices rise, half song, half chant. The drink is passed. The fire crackles. The air thickens with something that feels otherworldly. To drink was to commune, with ancestors, with spirits, with shadows. But here too lies danger. What began as celebration became dependence. What began as ritual became obsession. And what began as unity fractured into betrayal. Because where there is drink, there is desire. And where there is desire, jealousy always follows. Modern scientists analyze shards, test residues, replicate recipes in laboratories. They ask the same question whispered since the beginning. Was the first brew accident or design? Perhaps a forgotten jar turned sour and chance delivered a strange discovery. Or perhaps ancient minds, sharper than we give them credit for, understood fermentation. Perhaps brewing was no accident at all, but a deliberate choice. If so, then humanity's first true invention may not have been the wheel, or fire, or even bread. It may have been the drink. But if they truly knew what they were creating, another question lingers. What price did they pay for it? Close your eyes. Imagine the first sip, cloudy, sour, gritty with grains, honey sticking to lips, bubbles stinging the tongue, a taste both alien and unsettling, not refined, not filtered, but alive. That was the flavor of prehistory, of trial, error, and survival, but also of temptation. Today's craft brewing seeks to recreate those flavors. Archaeologists and brewers join forces, replicating recipes with ancient grains, raw honey, and wild yeast. But no matter how closely they succeed, the truth remains. The ancients lived without divine guidance, and many fell into error through what they drank. Fermentation was never only about drink. It was about transformation. It turned grain to liquid, honey to mead, milk to cheese. It turned hunger into food. But it also turned clarity into confusion, and perhaps life into death. Because in tombs and graves across the world, vessels of drink rest beside the dead, offerings to guide them into the beyond. Proof that even in prehistory, the line between celebration and worship, between feasting and misguidance, was never clear. And so the first toast was never merely to life. It was also, always, to death. We stand here, thousands of years later, with bottles in hand, breweries on every corner, and flavors the ancients could never imagine. Yet their mystery lingers. Was brewing the true spark of civilization? Or was it the beginning of its downfall? The answers remain buried in shards, whispered in residues, lingering in the smell of yeast and froth. From mud huts to temples, from firesides to pyramids, from forgotten caves to modern breweries, the drink has never stopped flowing. It carries memory. It carries danger. It binds people together. It tears them apart. It is both bread and poison, feast and famine, discovery and curse. When you hear of that first toast, remember this. Humanity's earliest drink was not just survival, It was temptation. And it was a lesson. A lesson we were only saved from when revelation forbade what harms and clouds the mind.